I really liked most terrorists I met. I know that sounds really bad because, when you're on a human-to-human level and you're just talking to him, this guy was smart, he was charismatic. He was probably a genius. They didn't view the Taliban as a terrorist group. They still view them as a political group, even though they kidnap people, murder people, torture people, they rape women, they rape children.
We're funding them again, right?
I think we spend $40 million a week.
$40 million a week goes to Taliban.
Yes.
What are your strikes usually? Are they captures? Are they drone strikes? Are they sending in teams?
Depends on what you're working. So I was working Taliban, so we didn't really have lethal approvals on Taliban. Maybe we had a Mullah Omar. So we had to capture Taliban. Because remember, the government still called them a political group. They weren't a terrorist organization. Mm-hmm. So we weren't really allowed to put Taliban, under a drone strike, but we really couldn't anyway. They were in Quetta, Karachi, Peshawar. It wasn't like they were in Waziristan.
Yeah.
Al-Qaeda, most of those targets, obviously, the attempt was drone strikes because of the locations of the country they were in. But if they're in the settled areas, obviously like Lahore or something, you'd have to capture them.
Okay. So as a targeter, you're attached to a certain group.
Correct.
Okay.
Or it can depend. So you can be attached to a group, you can be attached to a region, you can be attached to a city. So at that time, my job was the top 3 of the Taliban, and then anything in Karachi. So it could be Al-Qaeda, it could be Shia groups. It didn't matter. It could be organized crime. So I did any targeting in Karachi.
Okay. What's it feel like when you get these guys?
It was pretty exciting. The interesting part was, though, no one believed I really got him. So we got his photo, and of course they sent it first to a CIA asset that I always said was crap over in Afghanistan. He didn't ID the photo. So everyone's like, it's not him. I said, no, it's him. That source is crap, and you need to finally fire him. And then we finally got it into sources that did actually know him and weren't feeding us garbage. Because as you know, a lot of sources in Afghanistan fed us a bunch of garbage, got paid for it, and then they worked for 3 other intelligence agencies. So yeah, it was good to get him. In retrospect, though, I realized right away that I wanted to get him because he was number 2 of the Taliban, and he was the lead operational commander of the Taliban. So in my head, he's the lead ops guy. So every U.S. soldier dying in Afghanistan, it's on his shoulders, right? That's the way I viewed him as a target. Mm-hmm. When we got him in a room and we started getting questions from what the CIA wanted from him, that's when I actually learned that the president at the time, President Obama, had appointed the special envoy, and his name was Richard Holbrooke, and his goal was to do Taliban reconciliation. And their main focus, and they had made some assessment, and the only way they could reconcile with the Taliban was to use Mullah Barater. So we sit down with him and want to collect info to go target other Taliban members, right? Because that's what I do. I go after the bad guys, and I find out all my questions are, who would you be okay with coming to meet with you about peace? We would list off names of countries. Would you be okay if Japan came, the Brits came, all this strange stuff? And I was like, oh my gosh, they only want this guy for reconciliation. And that kind of became, that's when I saw, we're going to make a deal with the Taliban, and we're going to give part of the government back to the Taliban. I didn't think it was going to be what today was. So if I went back in time, I never would have captured him, because he is the reason the whole country fell.
Are you serious?
Swear to God.
So this goes way back.
Oh, yeah. And they had the plan before I captured him. The day we captured him, our chief brought us in the office in Islamabad. Well, we flew back up from Karachi, and he brought me and then the other guy who were going to be the lead debriefers, and he gave us a heads up. He said, FYI, he said, this is the number 1 focus in the White House. They want to bring out this Holbrooke guy. They want to take it over from Islamabad Station. They don't even want you guys debriefing him. So he fought for us to debrief him, but they pulled everything. They sent a psychiatrist out to watch our sessions to make sure we had rapport with him. I kid you not. They made sure his detainee debriefers had rapport with him. They were already kissing his butt right after we caught him. So yeah, and so he ended up getting released, and then he was the key U.S. Intermediary with the Taliban to make the peace deal. And I tell you, this guy, I mean, I really liked most terrorists I met. I know that sounds really bad because, when you're on a human-to-human level and you're just talking to him, this guy was smart. He was charismatic. I mean, he was probably a genius because he was locked up, but he could remember he told you something like 5 days ago. Like, he knew exactly when he told you stuff. He could defend anything. So if you said, hey, the Taliban did X, he would give you a really good justification why, and you'd be like, oh, yeah, that actually makes sense. Or I see the logic. Like one of the things is right after the fall. So the U.S. went in after 9/11 and they beat the Taliban in like 5 weeks. I mean, it was amazing. Like rah, USA. I mean, they really kicked ass. They toppled the Taliban. So the Taliban basically all went home. So Mullah Brader, in my theory, first took Mullah Omar and he hit him. So he hit him in a ruse gun, and Mullah Omar, I don't think, ever left there. Brader went home to like the home his dad owns. And they were like, we lost, we're done. Well, as you know, bin Laden crossed Tora Bora into Pakistan. So our war now on Al-Qaeda was kind of over. And it was like, oh gosh, we moved this whole war machine to Afghanistan. We beat the Taliban. And bin Laden's gone, what are we going to do? So they decided we're going to go target the old Taliban leaders, even though that we just beat the Taliban. So they made a hit list of the senior Taliban leaders, and then they came and bombed Barader's house. So at that point, he said, screw this, I'm going on offense. Like, you beat us, and then you come back here months later and you bomb my house, and they actually injured his dad, so that didn't help. And then that's when he triggered over and said, okay, game's on, Taliban's back, like you didn't win. And that's when he went full back in.
No kidding.
Right? So when he tells that story, I'm like, heck yeah, you come and bomb my dad, I'm in. So yeah, he would always have like a good story like that. So I can see how he would meet with U.S. policymakers and be very persuasive. Especially because remember, they didn't view the Taliban as a terrorist group. They still view them as a political group, even though they like kidnap people, murder people, torture people, they rape women, they rape children. Like, they still call them a political organization. It blows my mind.
We're funding them again now, right?
I think we send like $40 million a week.
$40 million a week goes to Taliban.
Yes.
Who are taking our allies, lining them up like dogs.
Yep.
And shooting them in the back of the head.
Ugh.
And we're funding that.
And that's kind of what you hope they do. I mean, I've got videos that are very, very painful deaths.
What kind of deaths?
Torture deaths, some really bad beheading deaths of our allies,
These are all the guys we used to work with over there.
Yeah, a lot of the people who worked with them get the video sent to them during or after. It's a taunt. They were taunting when the airport was still open. Like, when people were trying to get to the airport as refugees, remember the U.S. military, they were there, but they couldn't respond in any way to the situation going on. So to taunt them, the Taliban would grab a woman and shoot her in the head. They would burn a child alive in front of the military because they knew they couldn't act.
Yeah, I interviewed... Do you know Tyler Vargas Andrews by chance?
We haven't met in person, but I'm in the Moral Compass Federation, and he's in the Federation with us.
Oh, man, what an amazing human being he is. But, he was describing some of the stuff that he saw. And then, I worked over there for a long time, too. And we probably ran into each other without knowing it. But I had people sending me videos and cell phone clips of what they were doing, and I wish I could post it on here, or I wish I could embed it into this interview just to show people what's happening over there. What does it look like to see a infant burned alive, to taunt? What does it look like to see the people that you used to work with lined up in the mud and just shot in the back of the head, just going down the line, They don't put that on the news. These people need to see that.
Yeah, they don't put it on the news, and they also didn't give any help to these poor people who had to stand there and watch that. You know, our servicemen, like the trauma they had to stand there and watch and endure. They actually came back here, and, you know, a lot of them were told, we don't want to hear you talk about Afghanistan.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, you know, it's funny you bring it up because we were talking about India, and, you know, the bomber that Tyler had his eyes on was captured in India.
Did he?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So in 2017, ISIS deployed him to do an attack in New Delhi, India, and he went over there with the ruse of being like an engineer student and like started college. And then he was casing a few locations like the New Delhi airport, like the mall, and the Indians or the CIA. I was on the CIA at the time. One of them infiltrated the network of ISIS he was in and found out who he was. And they did a capture of him in India, and then they sent him to Bagram. So he was in Bagram from 2017 until July 1st, when we snuck out in the middle of the night, July 1st, 2021. We left in the middle of the night, didn't tell the commander of Bagram we were leaving. He comes in the morning, and the Taliban and terrorists are breaking all the prisoners out. That's when he got to prison. So we had him in custody for all those years. And the crazy part is I found out who the bomber was even before it was in the press, because my guy who gives me ISIS stuff for Libya sent me the photo in like the middle of the night. And I get a photo from him, and it's got a little bit of Arab text. And then he wrote in Arabic something. So I get up and I translate it. And I've honestly had not slept in a week at that point because I just got people into the Kabul airport. And I was like, oh, gosh, but it's Libya. You know, like I thought it was a Libyan terrorist. And so I was all getting up for it. And it said, you know, this man's important. You need to look into him. And so I translate the name on the picture, and it says Logari. And so I write back, why are you sending me an Afghan? It's like, it's still not even dawning on me that he's sending me somebody to do with the attacks, right? And so he writes back again, look at him. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And so I try searching the name, and I'm not getting anything on the name. And it dawns on me, and I said, was he involved in the Kabul airport attack? And he said, yeah. I didn't know he was a suicide bomber at that second. I thought maybe he was the planner. Because usually you don't know the bomber. They just take some low-level guy and, you know. And so, yeah, but that's how I found out. And then maybe within the next day, it hit the press, who he was. But, yeah, so.
Damn.